Next up, there's the tires. Yep. Cheapest possible things of all time. Not bad though. I can't believe of all places that are, you wouldn't expect. Walmart, $11 a piece. Huh? How do you possibly make tires and ship them for $11? I don't know. But anyway, to get these off there, see right there in the hub? According to the book, there's a roll pin in there. And that's it. You drive that pin out, and if it's not rusted solid somehow, which would be awful, the whole thing slides off, and then you just, whatever your normal means are, which I don't know what we're going to do. My tire changing tool that's kind of for car tires or trailer tires, I don't think we'll go through the center of that hub. So this might just be terrible, trying to muscle these tires under those rims, but not much I can do about it. That one's blown out the side. I mean, they do hold air, but for how long? I mean, they have to be replaced. So one way or the other, that's next. I think I've said a number of times, but I forget because I always, have to start a different project and come back to this one kind of thing. This one still needs those shims put behind the pulley to move that pulley out farther so that the reversing disc lines up better with the V-groove it's supposed to go into. So that's going to happen too. It's not that hard, it's just pain because you have to disconnect the throttle again, pull out one of these pins or push it through, and then rotate the engine to the side. And I think there was enough you can leave the other one there, I think, is what I did last time. And you've got room to pull the pulley off, slide a couple more washers on, and proceed that way. Otherwise, it's just push both pins out and lift the whole motor off of here, which also isn't that bad, except the belts get involved. We'll see. One way or the other, both those things are going to happen, and this project should be finished. Well, Houston, we have a problem. What's the problem, you say? Well, the pulley. There it is. So, where'd it go? This sits on the motor like that, right? Let me reach over here. Mr. Friction disc sits on here, and it's supposed to, this one's pretty dang worn. I really ought to order a new one. They're easy to put on after the whole thing's assembled without taking anything else apart. So I think I will get one if I want to make this thing 100%, which I guess I do. So, what's the problem? Well, when you press the lever over here, right, up and down, this raises up and down. If this wasn't already made clear, it's supposed to line up and drop right in there like that. Well, it doesn't. It was like this. So the distance is, I mean, you got a gas here. I'm saying at least one, maybe two more washers for a shim. Well, can we do that? Again, this is all because we are adding on a Harbor Freight Predator motor to this. It should work. The book actually says if you remotor this machine, you have to account for this. You're going to have to put shims behind the pulleys to get these to line up where they want. So this is supposed to have some slop in it. See it? To help center things. But I could tell when the drive belts are on there and you engage the machine, this was pulled all the way to the end, and still the belts were, off at an angle to where the pulley needed to go back up, come out this way. So even when this slid all the way that way to try to accommodate, it was hitting the edge over here, not far enough out. So, who cares? Well, right here, that's the number of spacers we had on there, those two. Then we put this bolt in. Wait a minute. Hold on, fiber washer. Oh, well, just pretend. There's the pulley, this thing went on it, right? This on the outside of that, and then a lock washer, and then this bolt. Well, I could already tell this bolt, you can see the dirt on it. That's about right. That's about the depth that it was in there. Come on, camera. Not even a half inch, I don't think. I had some spacers slid on here because I don't like this bolt being way out here and then being able to wiggle around with only going into the motor that far. And we keep moving it out, which means less and less threads are actually engaged in the motor shaft in there. Long story short, the Predator motor shaft is shorter than what used to be on here, is the problem. So I need a new bolt. I don't have one. That's fine thread pattern, because I'm gonna have to add on, I think, these two as spacers. Now there's plenty of length on that key, right, to engage the motor shaft. So I don't care if that's moving out. You still have enough that I don't think this motor would ever manage to shear that key off, even moving it out that much. But that bolt's not long enough. You're getting way out there to where you can't have a 1/4 inch of thread, especially when there's airspace in here. So I think there needs to be a spacer cut. I'm gonna have to cut one on the lathe out of steel that this bolt will go not this bolt, but a bolt will go through, keeps it from slopping any side to side to give it some strength. And I mean, a guy could just use a stack of washers, it would work, but one way or the other, need a longer bolt. I'm thinking get one that's like an inch longer and then trim off what you need if it bottoms out. But I want to have plenty of thread going into that motor shaft and here holding that pulley on, and a 1/4 inch is not enough. So no big deal, but that's where we're at. We got to get a different bolt. I got to figure out that thread pattern. I don't think the hardware store is going to have that in the length I want. So it'll probably be ordered from Fastenal, and it'll probably cost way more than it should, like $6 or $7 for one stupid bolt when it should be about 50 cents. We'll see, but that's what it's going to take. And I don't want a crummy grade 5 bolt either. I want a good bolt that you know is going to hold up. So that's it. Do that. In the meantime, I'll work on getting these tires on those hubs, which is now easier to deal with because I don't have the weight of the motor sitting on it. Whoop! Bada bing. Let's proceed with the wheels while we wait for that bolt to get here. Okie doke. There's the roll pins. They came off without a fight. So theoretically, it's not going to be a battle to get them back on there. So that's it for now. Mr. Tiller's going to get put aside, at least for a bit. By the way, in case anybody wanted to know, the Harbor Freight Predator motor apparently takes 5/16 with 24 threads per inch bolt, and this with shims is going to need somewhere between a 2-inch and a 2.5 inch. So I'm going to get all 3 sizes and go from there. This one with all the shims in there, which I think is one more than is needed, you barely get the thread started. So I bet you we'll end up using the 2.5 inch, but I'm not sure. That's the plan. Well, here it is. Tires are on the rims, obviously. Now I'm on the fence. See? Now we're dripping. And I think it's because when the weight's off the wheels, there's enough slop in those bearings, probably, that then the axle pushes on the other side of the oil seal, not where it's kind of worn at the top, right? Of course, that begs the question. If you got it this far taken apart, and you're going to get this Predator motor working, which means that if this part was all perfect, well, even if the Predator motor blew up, it's $99, and you got a whole new machine. Just bolt the other one on and keep on going. But this big part that does all the work, well, I think there's 2 oil seals in the front, 2 bearings in the front, same thing in the back on the tines. I don't know, maybe it's worth doing that. I'm leaning that direction. I didn't plan on spending that much time on this particular tiller, but who knows, this may be the one I keep forever for future use. So, you know, I think it'd work just like it is right now. Put the tires back on it, get those spacers right, and it's done. But, well, I'm on the fence. We'll see. Okay, there's not that much of an ending story here. Everything's done. I wanted to mention a couple things in case you are somebody working on one of these and this helps you at all. There's the new reversing disc. I got the last shim in there, and I might be able to show you the orientation now. See how this transmission gear slips forward and back? The book says that's supposed to do that. It has a little bit of float in it to help center that reversing disc. And I don't know if I can show you or not, but it does now drop right in that groove. And if you notice, if I let off of it, it has more room to go forward than it needs. And it has more room to go backwards than it needs too. Point is that the reversing disc, that fiber disc, does drop in somewhere in the middle of that range of motion, so it's good. That means both sides will be contacting and it should work as intended. So that finishes that. This machine is officially finished. New tires, everything works. The very last thing was the fuel system was so gummed up, and even though I cleaned it out, you saw it in the video, it did have to run with a tiny bit of choke on, so probably there's still a little bit of gummy gack in there. It could stand to have one more carburetor cleaning, probably. But it certainly does run. If you just put the choke on maybe 20%, if that, just a little bit, it runs perfectly smooth. So I'm inclined to leave it and see if that flushes itself out when you run it hard, get some gas pulled through there, if it will dissolve the last bits. Because, you know, it's already been off and cleaned with carb cleaner and everything else, as much as you can see, but there's little tiny passages in there that you can't really run a brush through or anything abrasive, and that stuff is so gummy, it's like dried up syrup sometimes. But anyway, what do we know? Everything works, like I said. It's had its oil changed, it's had its transmission fluid changed and topped up. It has a little tiny bit of dripping underneath it, but for this vintage of machine, I don't think anybody cares. And if a guy wanted to, you can spend another 15, 20 bucks and get new seals and put them on those shafts. Then we know the tires come off, so that's pretty easy to replace those front ones. I don't think the back ones leak, so maybe if I get inspired, that'd be one more thing to just add to it, because I'd like to be able to sell this machine with confidence of, look, everything works, everything's sealed, you know, it should have a good service life. And the only thing I didn't inspect visually was take the transmission case apart and inspect the quality of the worm gear in there and the drive gear. But like I said, it did have fluid in it. It wasn't dry. It did have transmission fluid in there. So I think the gears were kept lubed and probably in pretty decent shape. Who knows how much, you know, action this thing saw in its life before the first motor blew up. But hey, all those parts are available. But right now everything works, and if that ever failed, well, you can get parts. So I feel pretty good. This is a good machine for someone, and I appreciate you all watching. I think we got it as far as we're going to get it, and it should be in good shape. Thanks for watching. Oops, got distracted there on a rant. What I wanted to say was,
something that help guys out that might be working on one of these. At least this kind that's got 2 belts and a pulley and the reversing disc. You can get everything off without taking the motor all the way off. I just took out the 2 Frankenstein bolts here that are the pivot points for the mounting handle. Then the handle's loose from the motor bracket. Then slide just this side out. On mine, where I've got the throttle cable goes over there, so the point is I'm going to tip the motor out this way on the other pivot. And that worked. There was enough clearance if you pried the belts off behind that top pulley inside there with this thing all the way in the reverse position, meaning the motor slid down on the pins. You can get the belts slid off the back of the top pulley. Then if you remove this one pin, slide it out the bottom with this one bolt here, back that out about 1/4 inch, and then that will slide out. Anywho, then the whole thing will rotate like this, and there was enough room to take off the entire pulley and put a shim on the motor shaft, put the key back on, put the pulley back on, put everything back together, bada bing. Those 3 bolts I mentioned, and get the belts realigned, and everything was back in order without having to actually take the motor all the way off and disconnect the throttle linkage and the whole deal. So if that helps you out, you can replace, I think everybody already knows that works on these, you can replace the reversing disc without taking the motor off or even taking that bar off, but I'm saying you can get the entire motor shaft pulley off in order to add shims if you needed to without taking the whole motor off. It will fit. That was it. Thanks for watching.